WAER Sports proudly presents the Ostrom Avenue Podcast.
Lawrence on first down, throws over the middle. It's intercepted. Garrett Williams. He runs past the 30, the 20 on the near side, cuts inside the 10, the 5, and Garrett Williams strolls into the end zone for an orange touchdown.
In transition, Boeheim, right wing 3. You bet!
Sets up a screen near side to Strickland. Broke a tackle. He's in the open field with the convoy heading to the end zone for a Syracuse touchdown.
Taking you through all the highs.
20 yards from Cage straight away. Over the head shot, unleashed and in. Jamie Trimboli, are you kidding me? Added to the reel.
Bryce under pressure, he's lit up, and there's the fumble. It's recovered by Syracuse. 10-5, touchdown. Jeff Canton-Arku.
Syracuse comes in to Michigan State's backyard and stuns the Spartans.
And all the lows.
Jones up top, and Barrett slams it home with the left hand. Trey Jones, the facilitator, and Barrett has 30 points.
Louisville 30, Syracuse nothing. From Cardinal Stadium in Kentucky, the Orange shutout for the first time since 2016. Sidewinder, oh yeah, Pat Cavanaugh.
And now, here are your hosts, Ben Shulman and Johnny Gadamowitz.
Welcome to the Ostrom Avenue Podcast. We're getting ready here for the non-conference season finale against Liberty. With Johnny Gadamowitz, I'm Ben Shulman. Thanks so much for tuning in. Johnny, how are you doing?
Ben, I'm great. I'm in a good mood. Syracuse coming off of a big win, a huge upcoming tilt this weekend where we're going to find out a lot more about this football team. But really looking forward to it. Friday night game in the Dome should be a lot of fun. And, I think if you told any Syracuse fan over the summer that this is where this team would be at this point in the season, they'd be pretty amped rolling into Liberty Week this week.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about last weekend's UAlbany game and obviously a lot more about the upcoming Liberty game in a second. But first, if you're watching us on YouTube, thanks so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe the video. You can turn on notifications to find out when we post. If you're listening to us on your podcast provider, a like and a rating. And hey, go follow us on Twitter at Ostrom Avenue Pod. Johnny, you mentioned the big win, 62-24 over Albany. It really wasn't even close. UAlbany had one kind of window in the game. There was a pick six early on, but Tommy DeVito came out and just nailed Damian Alford in the chest on the next play and got Syracuse back on top. The Orange never looked back. A lot of positives to take from the game, but it's an FCS opponent. It's now an 0-3 FCS opponent, not even one that was winning games in their own division. So does any of the success individually or as a team really matter that much?
I think it does. Look, of course, everything has to come with a grain of salt, right? Going up against an FCS team. But I can't walk away from a game in which you put up 62 points and say it doesn't matter. And I think the heart of that is really Sean Tucker, the running back for the Orange. Over 100 yards from a rushing standpoint and a receiving standpoint. This guy is a real weapon out of the backfield. And for whatever reason, opposing defenses just can't seem to figure him out. Not only does he have the speed, not only does he have the power, but he's really elusive. I think he's got skills in a bunch of different departments that as a running back, you really want to have. He's not that Derrick Henry type power back, but he's not the guy that can't bowl his way through a couple of defenders if he needs to. So I think for Syracuse, look, we talked about it last week, Ben. He's the bread and butter of this offense. They are going to go offensively as far as Sean Tucker takes them, especially when you look at the quarterback situation and the fact that here we are rolling into week 4 now, and this team still doesn't have a QB1, which is ridiculous, but entirely besides the point. You're relying on that ground game, and Sean Tucker has answered the call. Now, to go back to your question, yes, it's a UAlbany defense that doesn't really jump off the page at you in any sense of the phrase. But at the same time, this isn't practice here we're talking about. This is still game action. This game matters, technically speaking. That one in the win column matters every bit as much as a game perhaps down the road. They count for the same amount. So I am feeling good. If you're a Syracuse fan, you should be feeling good. Look, am I ready to say this team is all in and ready to rock and roll for a bowl game? Absolutely not. But there are positive takeaways that shouldn't go unnoticed just because it's UAlbany.
So I don't totally agree, but I'm not going to say it like literally doesn't matter at all because, like you said, you have to go pick up your wins. So picking up a win is good. Outside of that, I really don't think it matters very much. Sean Tucker had a great game, and I was there, and I got to see it, reporting on that game, and he looked fantastic. But it also kind of did look like practice. I know it wasn't practice, but these guys couldn't catch up to him, and if they could, they just couldn't tackle him. It was just a whole different class of player than Sean will see in the Power Five. And that's kind of why I'm not putting a ton of stock into it. Congrats to Sean on an incredible performance, and he should be really happy. But it was 180 rushing yards against Ohio, then only 50 against Rutgers, then 250 total yards against UAlbany. It's not that I don't want to give him the credit for having a great performance. He can only play who he's going to play. But I want to see him do this against a Power 5 team or even a Liberty that, is stacking up a little bit more with the competition Syracuse has in the trenches. And then you get to see if Sean can make a bunch more people miss when he's trying to face open tacklers instead of guys who are being just demolished by the Syracuse offensive line because they're FCS players. So, I think the game might matter a little bit. I wouldn't be running to the papers with some of the stuff that happened in this game. And neither quarterback was great nor terrible either on that side of the ball. And I think that Dino Babers, although he said he's going to make a quarterback decision this week, I wonder how much UAlbany affected it as much as just another week of practice probably factored into the competition a lot. So I'm not putting too much weight in it. I think that it's, it's a win and they should be happy, but no one should take a ton of stock in what went on Saturday.
That's fair enough. I think at this point it was needed, right? Could you imagine the flip side of if this was not a 30, 40 point Syracuse win? We'd be having the conversation right now. All right, is it time to press the panic button? You escape with a mere 10-point win over UAlbany, but they get the job done. And like we said, now this is when we're really going to find out the true identity of this football team. You have a really tough Liberty squad coming up, and then it's conference play. It's the big boys. So as much as the past 3 weeks have been big, the Rutgers game, of course, a good litmus test as well, but no more mixing and matching, no more experimenting. If you're Coach Dino Babers, now it's full steam ahead, and you got to roll with what you got. And I think, I'm alluding to the quarterback situation especially, but the team in general, this is not time to mess around anymore. Liberty is a game you need. If you can roll into conference play with a 3-1 record under your belt, feeling good, I think that's going to really bode this team well moving forward. The question becomes, is there enough talent on the table to go out there and get a Friday night dome win this weekend?
Against a really good Liberty team who we will break down in just a moment. I just want, one more talking a little bit about mixing and matching with the team. Taj Harris didn't play last week, the lead wide receiver. And a lot of guys, even if Taj probably had played, got opportunities that they usually wouldn't have because it's an FCS opponent and a blowout. One of them was Damian Alford, who got a 73-yard touchdown pass. And with that one reception, Alford is second amongst wide receivers on Syracuse in receiving yards. Now, obviously, that's not totally representative of where he would fit into that room. But considering the lack of production that have come from the trio of Quealy, Jackson, and Johnson, none of which have more than 70 yards in 3 games, do you think Alford could find a place in this offense?
It's for the taking. Look, I mean, there's no wide receiver 2 on this team right now. It's Taj Harris and it's everybody else. And as much as Anthony Quealy had that spot to lose coming into the year, I think Alford is the guy that has a lot of upside. And maybe with Quealy, we kind of just know what we're getting at this point, and it's not what some Orange fans hoped coming into the year. So look, obviously with this team putting so much emphasis on the ground game, that lack of really a knockdown second option is not the end of the world. However, Taj Harris can only do so much, right? And when you're going up against teams that have a stud corner that's going to lock him down, whether it's DeVito or Schrader, they're going to have to find other guys to rely on. And I think, Alford is certainly one that can be in that conversation. I like what Sherrod Johnson brings to the table too. I think he's a guy that will get in the mix only more and more as time goes on. But for Anthony Quealy, it's time to step up. Let's see it already. I mean, as I mentioned when I started to make my point, no reason to believe that this guy couldn't have been the wide receiver number 2. And the production has just not been there. Not sure if that's a product of him perhaps not being on the same page with his quarterbacks. And granted, not ideal for any wide receiver having to work with 2 different quarterbacks. But at the same time, we're rolling into the meat of the schedule here. You got to get those early season kinks worked out. And Quealy's a guy who, if he can start to hit that top level of production that so many people thought he was capable of, it's just going to make this offense really that much more dynamic and add another weapon that will keep opposing defenses on their toes.
Yeah, it's not like Syracuse is asking him for so much either. I think if the Orange get 4 or 5 catches out of him in a game and 40 or 50 yards, that would be pretty good. The issue is they've gotten that total across the last 3 games. So it's just a little more needed, I think, from whoever's going to be the wide receiver too. But we'll find out when Syracuse takes on Liberty on Friday. To talk a little bit more about the Flames, we got the pleasure of sitting down with Alan York. He's the voice of Liberty football, and he gave us some insight into what the team's been doing since Syracuse last saw the Flames. We now have the pleasure of being joined by Alan York. He's the voice of Liberty Flames football, among other sports. Alan, thank you so much for coming on.
Benjamin, good to be on with you. And anytime, like we talked about a minute ago, spreading our gospel for what we do here at Liberty and advertising what we're doing for Flames athletics is a good thing. So thanks for having me on.
Of course. And how are you doing? And how has it been covering the team so far early in the season?
It's been great. Team's 3-0, fulfilling expectations, I think, right now, coming off back-to-back bowl wins under head coach Hugh Freeze, which is he is a really good coach. His track record speaks for itself for what he's done at the stops he's been at, and he's doing the same thing here at Liberty. And we knew going into the season that we were going to have a good team. I mean, I don't think every school can say that, but and some that may not have a good team come back say they do, when that's just being optimistic. But on paper, we knew we were going to be a really good team. And so far they've fulfilled those expectations. Offensively, we can dive into different things, but offensively, I think we're still a work in progress, but defensively, we're playing really at a high level right now.
You mentioned Hugh Freeze. He's now in his 3rd season as head coach of the Flames. What has he been like now that he's kind of settled into the program? He's no longer new at Liberty.
He's not. And I think for him, he left Ole Miss, and we all know kind of the story behind, why he left there, and took a year off from football and, kind of re-centered his life for kind of what he had going on with his family. And he's a changed man. And I think being here at Liberty, just educate your fan base. It's the largest Christian school in the world. And so those coaches and student athletes that want to grow closer to the walk with Christ can do that here and not feel ashamed, not have any backlash about it. And he is a high character Christian man. And I think he's able to kind of be comfortable in his skin here at Liberty. Number one, doing things to glorify Christ and also lead these football players and help them become better brothers and soon to be fathers and husbands. And he really enjoys doing that. On top of it, coaching the game of football, which he loves to do. So he's been a great addition to our athletics department. He is really good with the media, very comfortable with what we do from our audio, radio, TV standpoint. So he's been really fun to be around. That's for sure.
Alan, thanks so much for taking the time here today. You know, you mentioned plenty of offense to talk about, obviously, but you hit on that defense a few moments ago, and it's a defensive unit that has really been outstanding. 5 sacks in a game for the second week in a row against Old Dominion, holding them to -1 yards in that third quarter. What's made this defensive unit so tenacious through 3 games so far?
Johnny, I think it has to do with just the relationship our defensive staff has with our players. We had a lot of the same players back. You know, I'm going to go back 2 years ago under Hugh Freeze's first year. A lot of the same players back that were here in 17 and 18. And sometimes you get coaching changes and the relationships just grow in a different way from coaches to players. And our staff, I don't want to say relatively young, but on the defensive side, our coaches are, you know, early to mid 30s. I think they relate really well to our players, and they have really built some really good relationships with our student athletes, and saw a lot of good, tremendous improvement under Scott Simons, who's our defensive coordinator, in that first year back in 19. And this year, I think they've gone to the transfer portal. They've added some really good veteran pieces. At the same time, they've cultivated a couple of recruiting classes, and they've, you know, developed some good fruits from that labor. But the depth on this team has improved. Team speed has improved. I think, you know, talking to the media, you hear those things. Oh, the depth is great. The team speed's phenomenal. It is for Liberty. Now we do play at the FBS level. We're not Power 5. We are independent. And they've been really successful defensively. But I think the speed and the depth for what they've got defensively right now has really helped them. Case in point, 2 weeks ago, Henry Chibuzi, defensive lineman, had a phenomenal game. He did not play this past week against Old Dominion. His backup, Kendi Charles, comes in, and they don't lose a step. He has 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. And so that's just a microcosm of that depth that we talked about defensively.
You mentioned some of the transfer players that were brought in. I mean, it's almost every starter back from last year, but not all of them are starting because of guys like Duran Lowe, who got brought in from UTEP. What have you seen from him at the cornerback spot?
I think Duran is a guy that is continuing to develop and learn the system here. You know, hearing Scott Simons talk about these individual players, Duran being one of them, it's like they've got the talent, but coming into a new system, there's new terminology and just different things that they're learning. And we do have a new Duran plays cornerback. So Ricky Hunley's he's been here the last couple of years, our cornerback coach. Jack Curtis is our new safeties coach. And so with that relationship between the safeties and the back end with the cornerbacks, there is some communication that you have to learn. And Duran's a guy that hasn't really flashed yet, really like, oh man, look at that play. But he's been consistent, and it's like a long snapper. Long snapper can be consistent, and you barely call his name out unless he makes a mistake. And Duran has been kind of that guy for Liberty on that back end.
3rd year in a row, you guys are going up against the Orange, and I guess you could call this one the rubber match of the series so far. What's sort of the feeling surrounding the team right now as they get ready to come up to the Dome for a big Friday night game where, you know, a lot of people who are not playing until Saturday might just be hanging out watching that Friday night contest?
Johnny, I think it's one word: excitement. You know, Hugh Freeze has talked about going into hostile environments, and as a player, yeah, you like playing at home and running through the tunnel and the smoke and having your fans cheer for you. But there's also, me being a former athlete myself, something about, you know, taking the heart out of an opponent in their own stadium. And Liberty did that last year to Syracuse in the Dome. Now, granted, Coach Freeze has talked about it was really weird last year with nobody in the Dome, and it seemed like everything he yelled out, people could hear even on the other side of the field, which is probably true. I didn't travel for that game, but we did do it virtually, and it was kind of eerie in the fact that there were no fans. So they're excited. The only challenge is, and coaches talked about it on a press conference this week, you guys played at noon against Albany Saturday. We didn't play till 6 o'clock Saturday night. Now, granted, that's 6-7 hours separated, but then when you look at the games over 10 o'clock, 11, you have to get right back to preparation the next day, take into account travel on Thursday. So it is what it is. No, don't get me wrong. And the coaches would say the same thing because Syracuse is going through it as well. But it is exciting to be going up there regardless of the short week. But I think all teams want that exposure on national TV, and we're going to get it for both teams on Friday night.
Last season was obviously the first time Liberty had beat an ACC opponent, went on to win a bowl game over ranked Coastal Carolina. Do you think that the team feels like the favorites coming in now, coming off the win last year and with all the success they had in 2020?
Benjamin, I think they do for this game. And all the prognosticators are, indicating Liberty slight favorite. Again, it's a touchdown, or I'm not a big odds maker type of person, so I haven't really looked at it. I just hear from our colleagues in the building here of, Liberty's favored, blah, blah, blah. ESPN's giving them this percentage chance to win. But after what happened last year, beating Syracuse and the way they beat Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, the bowl win last year they were 1 point away from going undefeated. NC State beat them in Raleigh, another ACC team, but on a blocked field goal. We were kicking a field goal to win it, and NC State blocked it. And so that's how close Liberty was to going undefeated last year. They're not going to surprise anybody. They're not going to sneak up on anybody this year. But I do think they go in there with a lot of confidence, a lot of the same guys back. And from having that success last year against Syracuse, I think the sky's the limit, and they're feeling really good coming up there on Friday night.
When you look at Malik last year compared to how he started this year, what strides would you say he's made to make him that much more of an elite quarterback?
I think for him, just his pocket presence. Last year, he snuck out of the pocket a lot and could do those Michael Vick type of things and extend plays. This year, he's been more cognizant to stay in that pocket and throw the football. He had his best game this past week against Old Dominion with 6 touchdowns, 4 passing, 2 running. His numbers are very consistent. And the thing for this offense, they haven't turned the ball over yet, guys. And for them, as I mentioned earlier, the offense still has it leaves a little bit to be desired. I think we all would say that follow this Liberty football team. Why is that? Because all that firepower is coming back, but they haven't really put that one game together, with the exception of Old Dominion. I think that was their best game offensively. But for Malik, he hasn't tried to do much with his legs unless he needs to. And there's a couple of plays this year where, okay, I'm going to put the guys on my back and we're going to get this first down when it's 3rd down and 12. So he does know that, but I think for him, his throwing has improved, and physically, if you juxtapose pictures from last year to this year, just how much bigger he is and how much he knew he's going to be hunted every single down, and definitely going to be the case against a Power 5 team like Syracuse, whose defense is, if Liberty's is top 10, which it is, Syracuse is obviously 4th in the country. So points could be at a premium, but then again, we could get in a shootout. Who knows what's going to happen on Saturday or Friday, pardon me.
So the top receiving option so far for Malik has been Demario Douglas, which is kind of a flip from last year. It wasn't like Demario wasn't getting passes. I think he was 2nd in receptions, but 3rd in yards last year. Why has he kind of emerged so far above guys like Frith and Shaw?
Pretty much by necessity. CJ Yarborough, one of our wide receivers last year, elected to leave the program. Noah Frith, who is your bigger, I don't want to compare him to Taj Harris, if you will, when you look at size-wise. And Noah's been slowed by he had surgery on his right hand in fall camp. Now he is back and 100% healthy. And so you go in that first game against Campbell, and we just don't really have the size on the outside. So DJ Stubbs is back, another kind of slot receiver, and DeMario just happened to be the one that had the matchups that worked with the passing game so far. Scored touchdowns in his first 2 games. Kevin Shaw has been around the program a long time as well. And we talk about this depth, fellas, and that's what Liberty's got offensively as well. And so the guys you hear about, Kevin Shaw, DJ Stubbs, while they start and get plenty of reps, DeMario just has been the one that's flashed so far. So it's depth, and they're not all jealous of each other. They know when they all get touches and targets that this team's going to play good football, and that's been the case so far.
Is there a huge emphasis on that running game? Maybe not from Malik, but from a back standpoint. I mean, obviously, when you have a quarterback who is capable of doing things with his legs like Malik is, it certainly makes your offense more dynamic. But from a true running back standpoint, would you say that maybe opposing defenses don't need to throw as much focus there because of just how much Malik can do with his legs on top of being able to throw the football?
I think for us, we definitely want to establish a running game and keep him as clean in that pocket as we can. I do think with the +1 with Malik, that does keep defenses on their heels because of how much he has improved throwing the football. And with that +1 option, not every quarterback is elusive as he is. So I think it does keep the focus. If you're a linebacker, these secondary guys, if you get a good RPO game, that can open up some holes in the middle. And one thing Coach Freeze has talked about with our running backs, we do have a veteran in Josh Mack, who is a New York native, by the way, although he did not play against Syracuse last year. Josh has more, if you combine his yards at Maine, where he transferred from, he's the leading rusher of all the backs currently playing right now. He's got more career rushing yards than any back in the country. But Josh hasn't been as aggressive rushing the football as Coach Freeze has wanted. So that's why you're seeing guys like TJ Green transfer from Utah, who has started the last couple of games to get a little bit more involved in that rushing attack. So, but it starts with Malik. Obviously, he's not the first option to run, but when we need him to get some yardage, he's definitely capable of doing so.
Josh Mack from Rochester, and maybe he'll play this time when fans can actually be there, and then he'll have a little more of a homecoming. Before we wrap up, Syracuse, one of 2 Power 5 matchups for the Flames this season. They have Ole Miss coming up later in the year. How important of a game is this for Liberty?
It's important. I will say that because Liberty, while it's the largest Christian school in the world, we're only 50 years old. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year as a school. And when it comes to all these other blue bloods, 50 years old is a puppy when it comes to how young this school is. So we are thirsty for attention, and we're doing things the right way. We've got some good coaches around our programs. We're in the A-Sun for all of our other sports, but FBS independent in football. And I think the trajectory of what our athletics department's doing right now is on a fast track. We're having a lot of success recently, and that's just due to large part, we've got some great coaches, and our administration outside of athletics supports what we're trying to do from a branding standpoint. So this game is obviously important from a number of reasons, and having that national TV audience on Friday night can only help grow the brand for what we're trying to do here.
Well, when I got my second dog a few years ago, the little puppy, she used to beat up my big dog a lot of the time anyway. So we'll see if Liberty can do the same, or maybe if, the big dog in Syracuse reasserts itself a little bit on Friday. Alan, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Benjamin, Johnny, my pleasure. Good luck to you all. Best luck in your endeavors down the road.
Thanks again to Alan for taking the time. He's been at Liberty now for a long time, and he has a great look into how this football program has just completely transformed over the last few years. Excited to see him on Friday. Johnny, we might get up close and personal with Alan because on Friday, Johnny and I will be handling the broadcast on WAER. You excited, Johnny?
Can't wait, Ben. I'm excited. It should be a lot of fun. An Ostrom Avenue podcast takeover in the booth. Be sure to tune in. 8 p.m. kickoff, 7:30 countdown to kickoff. Should be a lot of fun, Ben. I believe our first time ever calling a game together, so looking forward to that. And hopefully we have an exciting game to call. And can't thank everyone enough for tuning in to Ostrom as always. But if you want to hear more of me and Ben and our hot takes and crazy opinions, then I don't think there'll be too many hot takes and crazy opinions on the game broadcast. But if you'd like to hear us, perform the art of play-by-play, then be sure to tune in.
Yeah, you were setting us up for something that I didn't know I could deliver in the broadcast. This will be the first ever time that two Ostrom hosts are calling the same game, because Brendan and I never got to do it, and Owen wasn't a play-by-play guy. But I ask you, through all the research that you're doing this week, what's kind of the storyline or something that sticks out to you the most so far from the game, kind of your favorite thing you've seen?
Oh,
and I put you on the spot, did not tell you I was going to ask.
Yeah, no, I like the question. Look, I actually mentioned it in the interview with Alan. This is really the rubber match between these two teams. They've gone head to head in the past 2 years. Syracuse, of course, taking down Liberty in the opener 2 seasons ago, and then the Flames having their way with the Orange last year. So a little bit of bragging rights on the line here, and 2 games that, or 1 game, I should say, that really means a lot to both of these 2 teams. You think about things from a Liberty standpoint, and not to say that they've had a cupcake of a schedule so far, but I think it's fair to say that this is by far their toughest test, albeit coming in as a touchdown favorite. But this is a game that I think, when the schedule came out over the summer, that these 2 teams circle on the calendar, but at least kind of had in the back of their head a Friday night matchup, 3rd time around here. And they've gotten to know each other pretty well, and everything is in place for this to be a very exciting game for sure.
It's kind of a sneaky non-conference, non-regional rivalry, but last year the Flames had a big celebration in the away locker room, which Orange players saw. It was all over Twitter. And then this year, Liberty themselves, like this was just players independently, Liberty themselves put out a graphic that was just basically a Liberty cleat stomping on an orange and crushing it. And Josh Black acknowledged that on his Twitter. So could be a little bit fiery on Friday. The thing that I think I'm most interested in, this team returned so many starters. Pretty much everyone is back. But they've actually made a decent number of changes on the defensive side of the ball. Not all subs. Some guys are in now that are transfers or just weren't playing last year that have now won out jobs. But other guys have switched positions, like a Javon Scruggs was playing safety last year. Now he's at the rover spot. Marcus Haskins, moving from corner to safety. I want to see, the changes in this defense because they played so well last year. I was kind of surprised they made major changes. So I think that is the storyline I'm hanging with. And then the people who know me know how I feel about Malik Willis. And I think he's potentially a first-round caliber quarterback to the NFL draft this year.
We'll see. Time will tell. He's certainly got the arm. He's certainly got the legs. And it seems more and more now like we're seeing these dual threat guys come out of school and really go on to the league and have immediate success, Ben. So hopefully, we'll keep our fingers crossed and we get lucky here that we get a chance to call a game. We knew him all the way back before he was a first round pick and a potential NFL quarterback, but he's got a long way to go. And I'm sure he hopes that this Friday night game at the Dome is just a stepping stone onto bigger and better things for Malik.
Well, the potential first-round pick in Willis tries to pick on another potential first-round pick in SU corner Garrett Williams when the Orange and Flames meet on Friday. The game is at 8 p.m., but WAER's coverage starts at 7:30 with countdown to kickoff. Make sure to tune in to hear Johnny and I on the broadcast, amongst others. We would really love to have you there interacting with what we'll call, the Ostrom Avenue broadcast or something like that. It's a working title. That'll do it for this episode, though, of the Ostrom Avenue podcast. Thanks so much to Alan York for coming on and sharing his knowledge with us about the Flames. And thanks to you for tuning in. If you want more Ostrom Avenue pod, you can check out all our episodes on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Make sure to follow us and leave a rating. You can find more on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave comments and likes for us as well. And always check us out on Twitter at Ostrom Avenue Podcast. For Johnny Gadamowitz, I'm Ben Shulman saying so long. We'll see you next week.